Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm Agata Bendik, and until recently, I was an innovation strategist based in London, originally from Poland, but you'll hear a little bit more about my story later on. When I've decided to make a big change to my life, and I'm currently based in a beautiful sunny Bangkok as I travel through Southeast Asia and I'm becoming a writer. So thank you so much for having me here. I guess I will just jump directly into my story a little bit. So it's actually a story that starts with a realization that every major change in my life, has taught me that comfort is not about safety, and it's a stepping stone towards growth. So here is how I got to that point. Growing up in rural Poland, my father was a figure I really admired. He often sat in his worn out armchair, reading a lot of books, and he always thought differently to people in my tiny village. He was so open and so brave and curious about the culture outside of what anyone else knew around us. And both of my parents ran a small grocery store. And I think that's a reality for many ambitious people. And they grow around entrepreneurship, they grow around their parents, seeing their parents struggle a lot to make things happen. And so as I watched my parents work relentlessly through the years, I was also supporting them through working in the small shop from a very young age together with my siblings. But because of my father's, I also grew up around books. We couldn't afford any travels. So my first passport to another world was a library card to a tiny local village library with a bunch of really old books and that musty smell that I'm sure many of you can recall. My father encouraged me to learn and grow, and I always felt that I have to leave the place I grew up in, must abandon my past. It was that wanderlust feeling that I couldn't shake off. I didn't know what wanderlust means back then, but I somehow had it inside of me. And then one day, my entire world changed when I learned that he passed away. Just like that. One day I spoke to him on the phone as he was taking a short weekend break with my mom. And then he wasn't there anymore. He died. Both of my siblings and my mom were there to say goodbye to him. Yet I was left out. I was 19, but I still remember every moment of it, every second I recalled in my brain for years and years after. The grief, that's one thing, but there was also a lot of anger of being left out. The shock, the emptiness and loneliness, almost as palpable as, the rainy, dark summer day that he died. It was a pivotal moment in my life, not only because I lost a parent, but because everything I thought about having a stable life has disappeared at a very young age. And it was the very first time I learned that comfort doesn't really protect us. And whilst I idolized my father even more after he passed, with years passing, I started realizing that he was a troubled man, and how his imperfections and flaws have been erased by mourning. So between the grief of everyone in my family, I felt really squished. I'm the most introverted in my family, so I really didn't know where can I mourn, and where can I relieve my anger. So I decided to pack my things and move to Denmark from Poland without any money, but a bit of determination to start a new life, a lot of hope, and I think that youthful kick that pursued that wanted me to pursue a different life where I wouldn't be a sidekick and I would be completely mine. So that was the first phase in my life. What was the force that was pushing me out? How did I know that leaving was the only way to escape that cycle of my family dynamics? And it was really the first time when my life changed. But that change happened to me because of necessity. I knew that by staying where I was, I'd enter a very long path to unhappiness. So the first few years in Denmark, while still grieving my father, I tried to replicate the life I had in Poland. I was entering toxic relationships based on insecurities and fear. I was working relentlessly, just as I saw everyone else do back at home. There was a pivotal moment back then, when on a frosty night at 3 a.m., and it was really frosty. I mean, it was a Danish winter. I was biking back home from a 12-hour shift in a hotel restaurant. It must have been around 4 a.m. as I reached home, and I couldn't warm up. I got into bed, I put on a lot of clothes, and I couldn't warm up. I was shaking, shivering, and crying. And not even those warm tears could help me warm up. And I remember regretting everything about my decision to leave. Who was I to think that I could succeed by dreaming this big? That's the thing about change, right? We tend to focus on the bad more than the positive progress. But then there was also something else about my life, because I could make lifelong friends, but I never felt like I really belonged. Um, I was mocked for my accent. I was mocked for being Polish, the constant money struggles, the family problems. But the most important thing was that I continuously kept on being reminded about who I was, not motivating me about who I wanted to become. Because sometimes I feel we need to pause in between who we are, who we used to be, and who are we becoming. And there is this incredible quote in a book, Sudden Death. I'm not sure if you've read it, where Rita Mae Brown's character famously says, "Do you know what insanity is? It's continuing the same behavior and expecting a different result." So in my case, life wasn't going to magically change just because I moved countries. And if I kept on using the same coping mechanisms I learned back home, my life would stay exactly as it was, even though the environment around me changed. So I started recovering through dreams and reading, getting out of my shell. Um, I realized that old me is not matching who I wanted to become. And I felt that Copenhagen and Denmark is just that path in between, in this recovery. And that's how I landed in London. It was the very first change in my life that I actually planned on my own terms, developing a framework that would later become something of a mantra to me. So moving to London was a change I actually made for myself, a change I designed, I planned and executed. There was no chaos. I still was running away from something, but it was the first time in my life I was in control. Not control of the external environment. COVID happened and I couldn't really control the lockdown, but I could control my response to it. I was lucky enough to work from home and I started to work out. That was the first time in my life I actually started working out and I got really into it. So I worked out every day, sometimes even twice a day, because it made me feel better about my response to lockdown. But there was something else that still kept on disturbing me, and it was working my way out of my old life. And so that's when my burnout happened. Um, there was a book called A Man's Search for Meaning by Victor E. Frank, a book I read in a moment of crisis. And he said that he said that in in a moment of crisis, it's how we respond to everything that happens around us. It's not about what happens to us. So I started realizing that I already knew a person who worked, loved, and suffered more than anyone else I knew personally. Someone who worked relentlessly, and someone didn't even mention until now. It was my mom who went through a lot of changes in her life through breast cancer, losing her husband, losing both of her parents, and then going through another divorce with her second husband. And yet she continued to command her life with abundant levels of confidence and understanding. So this is it. She made the change happen out of necessity, but she did the very best she could with it, coming from a house of with no running water, no electricity. She actually decided to create a change through that she could reach through work, through love, through standing up to suffering. So I started to emulate. Oh, sorry, I appreciate we are running out of time.
Yeah, so let me jump in here and ask you some questions. My goodness, what
Perfect.
a journey you've been on, Agata. Let's go back to losing your dad. How did losing your father at 19 shape your relationship with uncertainty and change?
I think I think it showed me that nothing in life is certain. I mean, it wasn't the first time I lost someone very close to me, but it was
Mm,
the first time where we lost him. And then we had to shift our lives to fit around the new change.
wow.
And it was very often that I didn't really have anything to say about it. It was happening to me because I was the youngest and
Mm.
because I couldn't really bring myself up to stand up to say, no, this is how I want to live. So that's it. It shaped my response to change by doing it abruptly and just not really thinking about it and just going for it, which is not very good when you have no plan. But now
Wow.
I've learned how to deal with it with years of therapy and learning.
So, you've spoken about burnout in the tech world. What does burnout really teach us about boundaries and self worth?
So burnout is your response, right? It's a response to a sort of layers of pushing those boundaries that you have, people pleasing, and generally feel pushed into directions that you're not really comfortable with. Um, so that burnout is really a response. It's a both a body response and a mental response that something in your life is not going in the right direction. And I think it's not really about burnout that is so worrying. And I actually wrote a lot about that. Burnout is only a symptom of something that's deeply wrong, but it's not deeply wrong with you or me or anyone who's been through burnout. It's something deeply wrong with the system that we live in currently, where we're squeezed for profits, and it's only about the outcomes that we do rather than the process of working or just generally enjoying our lives at work. So I felt that burnout is not necessarily the worst thing that happened to me, because the silver lining was that I've decided to pursue a different career in writing. Um, but burnout helped me understand that sometimes that's why it's a slow burnout. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think
Yeah.
it's actually perfect because it helps you starting to plan out your life as you want it, rather than
Yes.
say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to quit and change my life, if that makes sense.
So, how did your career in sustainability and startups influence your perspective on inequality for women in tech?
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm.
Because and we chatted about that, right? So I've had a 10-year long career in sustainability, technology, startups, health tech, mobility. And I came into this world because I was so passionate about the technology side of things and the innovation side of things. But quickly, I realized that sadly, the tech world is probably one of the less equality oriented environments and industries that I've ever seen in my life. And it was palpable. It was happening nearly every day. Um, and I haven't seen that before, which was really interesting coming, from the environment of working in Denmark, where equality is a little bit um, better. I arrived in this industry and I realized, oh my God, this is really bad. What do I do about that? So my first response was to push back as much as I could, to create something on my own that could help women in tech. But then after a few years of doing that constantly and seeing no results, I mean, the very good metric that we chatted about was the amount of investments going towards women only teams. It's not raising at all. It's not, the number is not changing. I mean, it was 2%, now it's 1.5%. It's not getting any better. And if you keep on doing something with a mission of changing it for the better and you can't see any results, you just become disheartened. And that greatly contributed to the feeling of my burnout. I felt, what does it even mean?
So, what was the most difficult no that you had to say to protect your peace? It's very difficult for women to say no.
It is. It is. People pleasing is sadly, not to generalize, but women are particularly um, prone to be expected to people please in their lives. It's say yes to this relationship because he's trying so hard, or say yes to taking more on board at work because you're so good at it. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, I wouldn't do that if it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get the promotion that I really wanted. So there are two no's that were really difficult. One of them was on like a personal level, on the family level, and it was saying no to pushing boundaries when it comes to my family. I love them very much, and I have great relationships with them today. But saying no at the beginning, when I was 21, as I moved to Denmark, I mean, I genuinely heard, um, saying, if you move out now, you'll become a nobody. And that's again something that I've written about. If you move out and you leave this little bubble that we're in, you're going to be a nobody. And
Oh man, that's shattering. So,
it
how did
is.
you rebuild your sense of purpose after burnout? And what role did writing play in that process?
I think writing helped greatly to systemize my thoughts around how I feel
Mm,
now. It's not about sort of just writing down all the anger that I have or all the grief that I had, but it's more about creating something for me that I hope people who are going through the same struggles can read, can get inspired with, and can think, wow, if she could do that,
I
I
can
can
do
do
it.
that.
I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that. So, why do you think so many women fear change, even when they know that they are unhappy?
I mean, it's difficult for me to say because I'm also perhaps in a different stage of my life where I'm childless by choice and I have an incredible supportive partner. So it's not like I had to run away because or create that change because I was in danger,
Mm,
which I appreciate so many women are,
yeah.
especially with the rising levels of violence against women, at least in the UK. And but I think there is this, people are not going to be pleased when you say no or when you say I'm changing. You
Yes.
often, maybe you yourself, hear thoughts of other people saying, oh, you've changed, as if it's something bad because what you don't want to do something that they were expecting you to do. So if we are inherently made to be people pleasing, how does it work out with the change? You can't people please and change your life. That's not how it works. So someone at some point is going to be very displeased with the change that you make. So that's why I think it's incredibly difficult for, especially for women, to make that change.
When we were talking, we talked about radical transparency as one of your core values. What does that look like in your daily life?
I love the word radical because
Yeah.
in the past, or even now, radical is, we think of radical as something that's really inherently bad. He's a radical, she's a radical. That means that she does something or they do something in a way that hurts other people. But I wanted to reclaim that word as radical, as a sort of an answer to other radicals around us, um, like such as the growth of radical right wing amongst young boys, young men. So for me, radical transparency is about not sugarcoating what happened. When I moved to Denmark, some people felt, oh my God, she might have such a beautiful life, or she might be happy. But the truth is, I had to make another change to reach that happiness. I think
Mm,
radical transparency in the age of social media is important because we
yeah.
tend to romanticize many aspects of our lives, whereas the levels of depression are rising. You can't see people are perfect, pitch perfect on the screen, yet have levels of depression and anxiety and eating disorders at the
Mm,
highest levels in ever historically. Something doesn't work, and I think that you just can't live in a bubble. You just can't live in that status quo. So being
yeah.
transparent with you, with yourself, with other people around you is so important.
So, how do you respond to societal judgment about women's choices, whether it's having children, careers, or lifestyle freedom?
That's a good one because I think that the most vulnerable victims of that societal judgment are young women, especially because
Yeah.
they don't have yet the confidence to
Mm.
to
Say
generally
no.
just say no, show the middle
Mm.
finger. Because sometimes that's what it takes, right? To
Yes.
say back off. I think it came with years of confidence, building that confidence. But it also came with learning from different cultures. I'm very privileged to have lived in 4 different countries, and
Mhm.
learning from all of the cultures around me was incredible. And I thought you yourself have, changed countries and moved
All
around a
times.
little bit.
Yeah.
And taking away the best things that you can is probably the best lesson you can get out of moving
Yeah.
around.
That's so.
Yeah.
Okay. So my last 2 questions are a bit of a thought experiment. In the first one, I'm going to
Mhm.
teleport you back to the younger you, that young woman who was feeling stuck, decided to go into the world and just do it, right? Just in case there's somebody who's listening to us now who's stuck and scared and uncertain about her next steps, if you could go back and give your younger self 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
Right. Yeah, I love this because I've actually recently, on the back of our conversation, created something that if I had as a 19-year-old, I would have probably become in general much quicker. So one of them is a framework that I've developed that helps to create a process around the change that you're looking for. So perhaps not for the youngest person, but maybe you're around 25 or 30 or 35 or 40 or even further down the line. You want to embody a process called ease, because change shouldn't be the most difficult thing that we have to do. So ease stands for embrace. So embracing the change and creating it within you. So sometimes it's really difficult to actually say, I can't go on like this. I have to move on. Ease, align with your future you. Think about who do you want to be, where do you want to be, and how are you planning to get there. Don't worry too much about how you're going to get there. Think about where do you want to be, and don't think some mediocre dreams. Think about the actual massive dreams that you want to have. Step is really simple, yet most difficult. You have to take the first step and the second step and the third step to finally get where you want to be. And then, as with all of the dreams, they will evolve over time. So, ease, embrace, align, step, and evolve. And I think that's together with don't be afraid to say no to people pleasing, no to bosses who just want to exploit you, no to colleagues who just want to push work onto you. Don't be afraid of saying no, but at the same
Mm,
time know that sometimes saying yes to opportunities is super important. So there are opportunities and there's exploitation. And be
yeah.
say no to one and say yes to the other.
Yes, to the other one. So, is there anything else I should have asked you and I didn't?
Um, perhaps not a question, but I just want to end with a question, if I may.
Yes, please.
A question to our audience is, what would you dare to change if you stopped waiting for permission? And
Oh,
ask yourself that question. If you stop waiting for permission from something, from your parents, your husband or wife or partner,
yes.
kid, God, anyone in around you, what would you dare to change? And whether that would be a good thing or not. I don't know. I'd like to end with that.
That is a beautiful way to end our interview. Thank you so much, Agata, for coming online and sharing your story. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are that young person who's feeling stuck, even at a later age in life, and you just can't seem to move, what would you do if you didn't need permission to do it, is what you said, right? I love that last question. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Agata.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. It was a pleasure.
I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story. Thank you so